Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Email Never Sleeps. I'm Andrew Kordek with iPost, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Greg Bryce, who is, full disclosure, a customer of iPost and a really great colleague who I've known for years now. So, Greg, why don't you give a little bit about background about yourself, and then we'll jump right into it.
Well, thanks for having me, Andrew, first of all, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, I've been in the email marketing space now since 2017. I'm a lawyer. I have a JD by trade, and kind of fell into this role, and it grew on me, and I've really been excited to learn and grow and figure out more.
You drank the email Kool-Aid, I think, is the one thing I always like to tell everybody. And you're a political email consultant. And so everybody, today's discussion on Email Never Sleeps is not all political email is bad or horrible. I think there's this perception for everybody that all political email is horrible and sucks. And, you know, and what I definitely do not want to do, for everybody in the audience, this is not a, hey, we're talking about the political right or the political left. We're talking with Greg that has had experience in this. And so I guess the question I'll have for you to kind of start out with, why is this perception so bad? And what do you do as a consultant, right, when you talk to people about sending the right political email? So I'd love to just kind of start out there.
Well, I think in the industry, especially in the marketing industry or email marketing, you can focus on the final results a lot of the time without really understanding how to get there. And, you know, everybody has the goal of trying to get people to read their newsletters or get a fundraising email in their inbox and have people donate to their campaigns, but they don't think about the process of making that happen or how they keep people around in their ecosystem for a long period of time. And the way that you do that is through understanding how to provide value. You want to provide value to your email list subscribers, the people who are in your ecosystem. And you need to kind of look inward and say, what would I like? What is too much? Am I pushing too hard? Am I not pushing hard enough? But you know, you really kind of try to think about the customer experience, because there is a person on the other side of that inbox that you want to open your email, interact with your email, and feel confident enough in your product that they'll, you know, pull their credit card out and donate, or they'll click on an ad, or, you know, anything in that nature. So you want to really kind of prove that you're not there to, you know, spam them or treat them poorly, right in your chase of the almighty dollar.
So this kind of piggybacks off of a lot what we talk about in the email industry itself. So I don't care if you're selling subscriptions, socks, donations, there's this whole trust and respect factor of the subscriber, right? You have to earn the trust of the subscriber. You said sending them content, sending them and keeping them engaged. But whether I'm you know, as a political sender in and itself, right? Let's assume that I'm a political sender. You know, I know that there's probably lots of tips and tricks, right, that you have. But like, is there one thing that you look at from an engagement, from content, right? Do you test the content? Do you play with content? And you probably look beyond just the email itself. You look at downstream metrics when they get to the site, right? So talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you look at that determines success in treating your subscriber like a human being.
Well, number one, list size, number one, is success. And so you look at your attrition rates and you figure out if your approach is doing right by your customers or wrong by your customers. And if your list continues to shrink, then you know you're probably doing something poorly. And that that doesn't have to be from unsubscribes or complaints. That could just be from people falling off your like base list segmentation. So that's number one, seeing how that list interacts. And then are people clicking on your subject lines and your stories? And if they are, then once they get to your website or your landing page, are you providing value to them? Do they want to stick around? Do they go to another story? How long do they spend on your website? All of these things become important, and one isn't more important than the other, but you use them all to paint the picture to kind of understand if what you're doing is correct or if what you're doing is wrong and you need to reevaluate your approach.
So let's think about this, folks, right? I mean, when we start talking and you hear the perception, the public perception, and I read a lot about it, I attend a lot of groups, and they're like, oh, these political mailers. But it's like anything else. When I've met people on an airplane or at an airport or whatever, and they're like, Andrew, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm in email marketing and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, you're a spammer, right? So I think there's this perception, right, that everybody is bad, as well, you're a spammer or you're a political person. And I could say with a tremendous amount of confidence that in any industry, there's always bad players, right? There's people that sort of kind of pee in the pool when you're not the one who's actually doing the peeing, right? You're trying to be that human voice and giving them the content that they want. And so tell me, what is a common trait of political mailers that you see that is somewhat destructive, right? People that don't play by the general rules that you advise people on.
People who don't understand the value of the customer, people who only look at it as, if I send 1 million emails, I'm going to make this much money. And they send as many times as they want to their complete ecosystem. And they don't think that there's going to be attrition. They don't think that there's going to be any, they don't think that there's going to be bad perceptions on the industry that way. But I will say this, like, we do see that in the industry. People get greedy and people want to push and push and push and push until they kind of push the cart, over the cliff. And then they're like, oh man, now we got to pick up the pieces. Yeah. But I think that competition is what allows good senders to set themselves apart. Absolutely. When people in the industry do bad things, it's not a black eye on the industry. It's your opportunity to take the other path and set yourself apart. So instead of saying, oh man, these people send too many emails, they don't do, they don't think about customer service and what their customers want. Well, that just leaves the opportunity to get those people who are disaffected by that process into your ecosystem by treating them correctly.
Mm-hmm. I also think it boils down to using deceptive practices. And let me just caveat that for everybody here, right? Because political senders sometimes use deceptive practices like deceptive subject lines, right, to engage or to get that open. And I think you and I have had plenty of discussions on this before in the past, right? It can only work to a certain point, right? Like you get to the precipice of, if you just use something that creates this urgency or fear or whatever, there's going to be atrophy around all of that, right? And so I think, when I think about deceptive practices, I also think about, just like you said, sending email for the almighty dollar, but also sort of treating it as a trigger point for everybody to get sort of really triggered. So with that said, Greg, what are some of as a political consultant today, if you have people out there watching this that are political mailers, what would be your advice other than to contact you for more information, right? Like, or is there a secret sauce that you want to give away? Or if not, we'll just talk about how they get a hold of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can find me on LinkedIn, obviously, and contact me that way. But I would say, like, if I had any advice to the political mailer, it would just be to look inward. Like, what do you want your inbox to look like, and try to emulate that. And, and if you're not introspective enough, well, then it's not going to work for you anyway. But if you can figure out what you want what you would like your inbox to look like, if you were a politically engaged person, then I think you're on the right track.
And I'll also mention this. We're recording this probably about 3 weeks before the midterms, right? There's going to be a lot of emails sent. And I saw this one quote yesterday that says November 8th will be a day that you shouldn't send any email other than because you're going to get blitzed with political mail, right? But I would also say is that there's this crunch time that we're all under as we record this, but then kind of going into 23 and 24 into the elections, right? Everyone wants to keep the foot on the gas pedal. So I think the one thing I would say to everybody that's a political mailer out there is take a step back for a moment. Oftentimes you can get better results, right? Whether you're, again, pushing content that's a newsletter or pushing something for a donation, by being more strategic in how you send the email and the things that you say versus quantity, right? We always hear quality over quantity. I get that, right? But I also think that there has to be this sort of introspective strategy to take back and maybe even invoke a test plan, right? Like if you're going to test certain things, right? Because I subscribe to all different types of political mail and they kind of all look the same, right? And so there's this notion that, well, what's worked before in the past is going to work again in the future. And I'd say, no, we are under a different auspices. We're in a different time in the world and in the United States. And we have to kind of roll with the changes of what everybody else is rolling with. So final thoughts, anything you want to say? I definitely will put your digits up there on LinkedIn for you to get a hold of as a political email consultant before we shove off, or if not, we can definitely end it here. And want to thank you for your time. So you tell me, you got any final words?
Well, just to expand on what you said, as we kind of approach the midterms and look into 2023, 24 and beyond,
Yeah.
I think the changing atmosphere is that we used to be able to burn the house down and we had insurance to rebuild it. Mm-hmm. And I think in the new climate where there's a lot more competition, there's a lot more people in the arena, that you may not have the opportunity or the materials to build your house back up if you burn it down. So yeah. I think that's really an important approach as, we get into these crunch times and we get into situations where we feel like we need to do this. Mm-hmm. Like you said, maybe it's time to take a step back, mm-hmm. take a deep breath and reevaluate that approach.
And I'll say unequivocally, you and I have worked together for several years now. I think you're spot on a lot of different things. And so folks, if you're thinking about becoming more introspective, taking a step back, I certainly encourage everybody listening to this to maybe get a hold of Greg. He knows what he's doing. I've seen his numbers and they're absolutely amazing. And so I think he's got his finger on the pulse of the political email industry. Certainly iPost can help or not. I mean, it's up to you guys. But I think you've given a lot for people to think about. And I just hope that we end this cycle of consistent quantity as opposed to quality. And so with that, Greg, I wanted to thank you so much for your time today. Everybody, you'll get the digits of where to contact us or him or myself. We're happy to take part of it. It's always great seeing you, Greg. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it. Thanks for being a great colleague, friend, and mentor. You're one of the best in the business, and I appreciate it.
Same to you. Thank you for everything.